Hello, I'm Teena Cahill, and welcome to Wisdom and Beyond. Today we have my good friend Phyllis Marganoff. Hello, Phyllis.
Hi, Tina.
Phyllis is a psychologist up in Millstone and here in Princeton, right?
Right.
And you know I have a spot in my heart for psychologists. And Phyllis is our little guru on relationships. Tell us a little bit about yourself, first of all, though, Phyllis.
I've been practicing psychology for longer than I like to remember.
Okay. Or sometimes can remember after we reach this point, right?
Too. Mm-hmm. And specializing in relationships, because I think relationships make the world go round.
Yes.
And it's very interesting to work with people who are struggling with relationship issues. And I've got an office here in Princeton, one in my home in Millstone. And
so who doesn't struggle with relationship issues, right? Sometimes we all do. And as you know, I speak all over the world. And while I talk about, you know, how to build resilience and have your greatest leadership and communication, what I always say to everybody, but underneath all of that are the relationships, whether it's at work or at home. So you have this fellow, John Gottman, who researches relationships that you really like, right?
yes, I do.
Tell me
I
about
like
that.
John Gottman very, very much.
Have you ever met him?
I have met him, I've done training with him, and I have become a certified Gottman therapist.
All right, we've got a certified Gottman therapist here. Let's hear it. Tell me about his research.
And what we're going to talk about is his research, not the therapeutic aspects
right,
of
we're
it.
not doing therapy over
No.
the TV here. We're doing an educational program, right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
and this is all based on his data.
Yes.
Okay, let's hear
Well,
it.
let me talk for a minute about how I got interested in John Gottman, though, because I had been doing couples work for many, many, many years, using theories that were quite current, up to date, et cetera, et cetera. But all these theories were just that. They were people's ideas about what made relationships work.
Starting with Freud.
Correct. And moving on to people like Murray Bowen, Salvador Minuchin, Jay Haley, all kinds of very highly respected people who were in the field of communication. And all of a sudden, one day I happened on the research of a man named John Gottman, who was a psychologist, a professor out at the University of Washington in Seattle, who decided to take a look at how happy couples functioned.
And let me talk to everybody for a second about how we got to that. You know, the history of psychology really started with, it came out of philosophy, actually. And then we had Freud and his ideas and theories, and Jung, and then all the people that Phyllis has talked about. And these are great guys. I loved Salvador Minuchin and some of these people when I was going through graduate school, and loved to read their theories. But really what happened in the 20th century was the rise of cognitive behavioral psychology. And what we mean by that is psychology that's based on empirical data. It's stuff based on research. So now there's this big field now of cognitive behavioral psychology, which is based on research that people have done. And Gottman came out of that. He came out of that. He decided to do research on what would be the stuff that we would find, what makes a good marriage, but let's look at it not from what I think, but what the research says.
Let's look at it by looking at couples who are doing it and see what they're doing. So he created something in Seattle at the University of Washington that became known as the Love Lab.
Okay, and he's taken a lot of heat over that, the
That's
Love
right.
Lab, but that's
the
a lot
Love
of
Lab
fun.
was an apartment on the University of Washington campus where couples volunteered to go for 24 hours and live a typical day in the life of a couple. So while they agreed to be in this Love Lab, they agreed to be videotaped. They agreed to look at their own videotapes afterwards and report what they were thinking and feeling when they were doing certain things. They agreed to have blood tests taken, urine samples taken, so that all the stress markers could be measured. They even had something they called jiggleometers attached to the chairs so that they measured how many times people moved while they were talking.
Okay, so not the stuff that maybe most of us do in the typical day of a
Right.
couple, but okay, I get it.
Right.
So tell me about his book, tell me about his research.
Well,
what do we know from
out
what
of that
he's looked at?
research, which took 20 or so years, John Gottman developed some principles based on what he saw these happy, satisfied couples doing. And he compiled this research into something that he calls the Sound Relationship House. Happy, satisfied couples, which he labeled the masters of relationship, and the other one's the disasters of relationship.
And I think I've been both. I'm
think
sure we've
all
all
of us
been
have.
both. Okay.
But the masters of relationship build a sound relationship house. That's what he calls it. It's built on a foundation of, first of all, knowing one another very, very well and constantly updating what they know about one another. He calls that love maps.
Okay.
Out of that...
So how are you doing, dear? What did you do today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
so tell me,
who did you have lunch with?
Okay.
And what movie did you want to watch on TV tonight?
So attending to one another.
Attending to one another.
Showing the interest that we have in one another. Okay.
It's the same kind of thing that couples naturally do when they first start courting.
Sure.
My daughter is on the phone with her boyfriend 75 times a day, and I don't know what they talk about, but they're always filling each other in on what they're doing.
Well, you know, I love Helen Fisher's work. She's at Rutgers, the anthropologist. I'm not talking about your daughter, but when they're first courting, of course, those hormones are really going, you know, and that dopamine area of the brain is really going, and it really makes you sort of want to know everything about the other person. So you're saying that after we actually connect, we're with one another for a while, I mean, we know that dies down a little bit, so we have to work to make that happen.
Exactly. And couples who are happy and successful in their marriages and relationships do it naturally, so that even though the hormonal base of it may not be there,
as much.
It's a learned behavior.
Okay, so this is something we can learn to do.
It is a tool.
It's a tool. We can learn to be masters of relationships.
Yep.
So this is one thing. We attend and ask the other person about their life.
Right. And from that, the next level is something he calls fondness and appreciation, which is expressing caring and appreciation and admiration for the person. So when your partner walks into the room, your eyes light up, you give a little connection across the room, you find a way to say, I love you every day.
Now, is he talking about being sincere, or is he talking about fake it till you make it? What's he talking about here?
John Gottman would probably say some of both.
Okay.
That out of faking it till you make it comes the making it.
Okay.
That passion grows out of, first of all, knowing one another, secondly, being appreciative, and then when your partner turns toward you, responding in a positive
letting
way.
them know, he or she know they're cared about.
Yep.
Yes, okay.
And what that does is build what he calls a positive perspective. You're able to give your partner the benefit of the doubt when things don't work out so well. You can,
we have the positive perspective,
Yes.
not the partner's perspective of how we view them, but rather we're building a sense of surrounding our partner with positive valence.
right.
We're looking at them that way, seeing what's right, not what's
Yes.
wrong.
And if two people in a relationship are always giving each other positives, they're putting money in an emotional bank account. So if something negative comes along because of circumstance, because of the context, because you've just had a really bad day at work, you can say, oh, she just had a bad day at work, or this isn't how he usually acts.
This is what I think is one of the most interesting things that Gottman talks about that I really like. And this, I think what you're saying is that successful couples, when the other person has not been there at their best, when they've done something that you don't really like, you have in this emotional bank account a memory of all the things you really like about them. So they are not defined just by this one thing that you don't like.
Exactly.
I think that's great.
And John Gottman...
That's a cognitive reframe, by the way.
John Gottman started out as a mathematician, and so all of his data was very, very well analyzed, and he found that in happy, successful couples, there is 5 positive to every negative exchange.
5. So a person says 5 positive things for every negative thing they say?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I was never really great with percentages, but I'm going to work on that.
Well, give 5 positives to your partner.
So you get to do 20% negative, all right?
To 80% positive,
I got it. Okay, I'll walk around counting now.
And the other side, another piece of Gottman's research deals with how people repair after conflict, because his research showed that 69% of what couples argue about is what he calls perpetual problems or unresolvable issues.
And I think that is so important to understand.
It is.
So what you're saying to me is 69% of the things that Brooks and I may have conflict about will never get solved.
Right.
And so just learn to live with it if you like the rest of the guy or the woman.
That's exactly
with
the
ya.
point. 69% of it is you learn to live with it. You hook up with a person in a relationship and you are taking on a set of problems. You marry somebody else, you marry a different set of problems, because each of us has our own personal, cultural baggage.
Well, that's what I always say about marriage or divorce. When people choose to stay married or they choose to get divorced, it doesn't really matter. It's none of our business. But the reality is that when we're married, we have one set of problems, and if we get divorced, we may have another set of problems. But we all in life get to choose the set of problems that we have.
Right.
So what you're saying is then applying it to the person. I always say that choosing who you're going to marry is like a puzzle. It's like the interlocking pieces of the puzzle. Now, I probably don't say it in the most positive way that Gottman would like, but I like to say, so that I'm screwed up the way this person I like is screwed up, so our screwed upness fits together. I guess we should say our strengths fit together, right? But that's really what you're saying.
But in any case, you marry a person, you choose to join up with a person, and you are joining up with that person's set of issues and concerns, which are different from my set of issues and concerns. So anybody I'm connected with in a relationship, I'm going to have to struggle with those places where we don't see eye to eye.
It would seem to me, now maybe I'm wrong, but a lot of my male friends would really be relieved to know that maybe 69% of the stuff just doesn't have to be worked on, just doesn't have to, there doesn't have to be an agreement. Not that it's not worked on, but they don't have to come to, because sometimes I think guys are like afraid of not knowing how to do that.
Well, the key is that John Gottman talks about a concept he calls dreams within conflict, which I just love. He has seen that when an issue comes up over and over and over and gets gridlocked, it's the same old, all over again. Usually, it's because within that conflict, there is a deeply held dream or value.
Can you give me an example of one?
Well, let's take a married couple in a traditional marriage, and the woman believes that fathers should absolutely be there for every single event in their child's school activities. And the husband believes that a father's primary job is to earn a really good living and provide for his family in the best way. Top of the line everything. Every night that husband comes home and there's been a softball game or a baseball game, wife is going to be annoyed at him.
Sure.
And she's going to say, well, you said you'd come home, or can't you make it home? And he's going to say, but I got stuck at the office because I had to do da-da-da-da-da because I'm working on this promotion. That's going to come up over and over and over again because there is a dream.
And so
of
what would
good fatherhood is about.
Right, so what would Gottman say to do about that?
What Gottman would say is it's important for this couple to be able to talk to one another about the dream that they have and what it means to them. And typically what usually comes out is that this woman whose dream is that her children always have a father present at activities is coming from a place where her father was never there for her activities. Or her father is deceased, or her father left when she was 2 years old, or there's some other piece, and the dream is about redoing what didn't happen in her own life. You might find that this husband came from a family where his father left, or his father was a ne'er-do-well, or his father was unsuccessful in business, and he was the man of the family, and he said, when I grow up, I'm going to make sure that I'm a father who brings home the bacon for this family. So they've got conflicting ideas about what good fathering is, and what's important is to be able to talk about it in a feeling way, to talk about the feelings that they have, not about the facts.
Right.
Because another piece of John Gottman's work, I can rattle on about this,
Keep going.
is that when people are flooded with stress and distress, the central thinking executive part of their brain doesn't work.
Right.
The reptilian brain down here works.
Our amygdala kicks in, it senses danger, the basic survival part of our brain fires faster, and our thinking part fires a little bit slower. So if we've ever been in a situation where we were too scared to think, we probably were too scared to think.
Exactly.
So in conflict, that's what
happens. And so
happens.
couples need to learn how to soothe themselves, soothe one another, and recognize when that flooding is taking place, when that stress response is going on, and be able to say, let's take a 20-minute break, because it takes 20 minutes
Right.
for people to calm down
Right.
and get unflooded.
Right. And I think underneath all of that I think is really valuable, and it goes back to Gottman again, is I think it's so important when you're having these conversations to remind yourself what is right with this person, not what is wrong.
If you can.
If you can.
If you can. And it
That's
sometimes
right. There are always those
takes,
times there's nothing right about
Yeah.
any of us, right?
Now, another piece of Gottman's research that I think is fascinating is he found that there are 4 behaviors that are poisonous to a relationship.
Okay.
He called those things the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Oh God, I hope I haven't done any today. Let's hear
And
them.
all of us have done all of them.
Okay.
But again, being a mathematician at heart, he demonstrated that it's the amount of times, the frequency that those
Yes.
things show up.
Right. So it's
That-
okay that we've all done these things. It's
Yeah.
just he talks about how often we can get away
Yeah.
with this and still have something work.
Everybody gets
Okay.
a pass now and then.
Okay, let's hear
But
them. Let's hear them.
criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling are
Okay.
poison.
So stonewalling, by that you mean?
Refusing to give eye contact while we're talking,
So I'm mad at
really
you,
annoyed with
and I'm
you,
talking with you, and you don't want to
but
deal with
I'm not
me.
going to look at you.
Okay, got it.
Or I'm going to correct your grammar because you just used a singular when you should have used a plural.
All right, or you're going to storm out of the room or whatever.
or I'm
okay.
gonna
So
curl
that's
my lip.
stonewalling. Oh, you're going
The
to.
contempt.
That's contempt.
And by the way, let me say, there is a universal across the world indicator of contempt, and it's this buccinator muscle.
Like
of
this?
Yep. That muscle goes into a little spasm,
Huh.
and all over the world that's recognized as contempt.
I don't think I have
So,
much contempt then. That doesn't feel
eye
normal to
rolling
me.
or that
Oh, like
kind
that.
of thing.
Ugh, like
Yes.
what a goofball.
Or contempt. Now, there's an
Okay.
antidote for that,
All right.
and the antidote is specific complaining. It's
Oh,
okay to
complaining.
complain.
I can do that.
Okay. It's okay to do that with specificity.
Yes. Okay. And so what you're saying to me is instead of engaging in these sort of passive aggressive responses, I guess maybe we would call, doing this with your thing sort of passive aggressive or rolling your eyeballs, you're saying let's be a little bit more assertive. I always tell everybody there's a difference between assertiveness and aggressiveness. Assertiveness doesn't really attack the other person. We speak from our feelings. Aggressiveness is more likely to attack. So back in the 60s, when I used to do assertiveness training with people, we used to have this thing that you teach people to say, I feel when you because. So I would say to that father who's walking in the door, I feel sad when you didn't make it to the game because I wanted our child to feel loved by you.
Exactly.
And what would you say back to me if you were that father?
I would avoid defensiveness, which is one of those 4 horsemen, and I would take a deep breath because I know that I'm sensitive about that and I can get flooded, and I would say, gosh, I blew it. I would accept responsibility, which is the antidote for defensiveness.
And so that just does it for me. When you
Yeah,
accept
I blew it.
responsibility, I don't have to be mad at you. We're in agreement. There's no
Exactly.
argument here.
Exactly.
So I was right all these years when I said to Brooks, you really do want me in your face. You really do want me in your
Yeah.
face, telling you what I want or need, because
Yes.
first of all, then you know where I am,
Yes.
and secondly, this is how we work it out in a nice way, hopefully.
Now,
by
another
sharing
piece,
this.
another piece of this that the research showed is that there were 2 gender-linked factors here. One is that women tend to do what he called a harsh startup. Why didn't you come home?
Right.
As opposed to, it really made me sad that you didn't get home tonight. And men tend to get defensive.
Yes.
And if men can accept influence from their wives, or from the women in their lives, things can proceed.
Which
in
is
a
what
positive
Gottman
way.
says is good for guys to think about in relationships, because I forget the woman that wrote The Female Brain. I can't remember her name now.
Yeah, I
but
can't
one of
either.
the lines she had, which I loved, she said in the woman's brain, even though men and women's brains are 99.9% the same or somewhere around that, we're not that different. Everybody talks about Venus and Mars, but the reality is, here's the great news, we're all from Earth, and it's important that we know this so we can work things out. But she does talk about women have a super highway for emotion in their brains and for relationship stuff, and men have an old country road, right?
Exactly.
So we could be building up a storm sometime, getting ready to blast this poor guy, and he's just trying to get back from New York or something like that, right?
And it's very important. Again, I tell couples that I work with, when you were young and first became sexually active, you didn't know when you were going to have an orgasm. You just had it. because your body took over. As you get older and more experienced, you notice the signs before you're getting there. Well, people need to notice the signs when they're getting flooded too. And rather than just burst out with, why didn't you make it home in time? You need to notice as your gut is clenching and your chest is
Maybe I'll use that
heaving
analogy as I talk to my husband about this. It might make him a little bit more interested
Yeah,
in working on relationships.
Exactly. And you need to notice, when that knot is starting in your stomach or your jaw's clenching a little bit, and you know the signs of when you're getting
Sure.
overwhelmed with stress.
Sure. All right, so we've got the Four Horsemen now. What do we
I'm
have?
not sure I covered
I think we missed one.
I think
Go through those again.
Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Stonewalling is obvious.
Right,
It's walking out of
right,
the room
right,
and not
right,
making
right.
contact.
So what's the percentage we're allowed to do this and not blow it all up?
I think the idea is that it happens to everybody occasionally.
Right.
But if it's coming up consistently, there's a high probability, a very high probability, like a 90-some% probability that you're going to end up in divorce court.
Well, that's from Gottman's research where he can look
Yeah.
at these couples. It doesn't mean that if we screw up one day or the next day that we're headed for a divorce court.
Not
it
at
just
all.
means this is based on his research.
That's exactly
okay.
right.
So what else does he have to say? Because I can think of a couple things he talks about that I love.
Well, mention
Being friends. Talk about that for a second. About how it's important for couples to treat one another like a friend.
Absolutely. The foundation of his work is the friendship. When couples divorce, I just thought of another thing I want to
Okay.
say. When couples divorce, they say it's because they grew apart. The friendship didn't grow. And by the way, his research showed that couples wait 6 years from the time they notice a problem to when they go to do anything about it. So while I'm here not pushing therapy, I am pushing prevention. These are tools that everybody can use and ought to start using right from the get-go to continue to build and grow the friendship, because the friendship is the foundation on which everything else
And how do you do that?
rests.
Does he talk a little bit about how we do that?
Absolutely.
What are some of the ways?
By checking in every day on that love map stuff. What are you doing today? Who are you having lunch
Showing
with?
interest.
What
People
book are
value.
you reading?
People figure out how valued they are by how much time we spend
Right.
with them. So making sure we make
So
time.
what book are you reading? Did you see
Right.
that book review in the New York Times? What are the kids doing tonight? Are we babysitting for them? Checking in.
Okay.
That's the first level of the friendship.
Okay.
And the second level is the showing love, showing appreciation, showing admiration. Thanks for picking up my stuff at the cleaners today. I really appreciate that you left me a cup of coffee. Those are the bids and turning
Right.
toward. That's the friendship.
You know, one of the things that Brooks and I talk about sometimes, because as you know, Brooks is disabled and our relationship has changed, and that makes all kinds of, new, novel circumstances that we both have to try to figure out how to keep the relationship at a great level while dealing with things that, we never knew were going to be in the relationship. And sometimes we've used Gottman stuff in our home, and I will say to Brooks, gee, I'm so sorry about how I just spoke to you. I don't think I would speak to a friend that way. I don't think I was being a friend to you. Or he might say that to me. He would say it in 3 words. I would say it in 27 words. But I think women do 20,000 words to men 7 or 8,000. I just read that, and that certainly happens in our house. But that's what you're talking about. And when we catch ourselves not doing it, just say, look, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to treat you that way. Because my deal is, I think quite often we give our best stuff to the people outside the family, and it's our job to sort of bring that best stuff into the family.
And make repairs. Gottman uses the word repair. Repair after conflict.
So it doesn't mean that I can't make a mistake. It doesn't mean that I can't blow it every now and then. It doesn't mean I can't have a bad day or be, use that, I'd be called that B word, and I don't mean balance, okay? It means that there are these tools that we can use to repair some of that damage when we do what we all do, because we're imperfect and there's no such thing as perfection.
Well, and
more than in a moment.
And the fact is, if you've got a good emotional bank account where there's been a lot of positive, it doesn't do a lot of damage because people give each other the benefit of the doubt.
But I always think it's a good thing to apologize when
Absolutely.
we do it, don't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
you've got to be doing those basic
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Always, always, always. And then there's a lot of forgiveness.
Absolutely, and that's something I think doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, I believe that if we're in any relationship for more than a day or two, we need to be forgiven and we need to forgive others. And it doesn't mean that we approve of what people do. We just know that no one's perfect. And I always say if someone could do better, they would.
Absolutely.
And, you know, sometimes it's a process of education, but forgiveness is important, really, for us.
I want to take another minute just to throw in one other thing that I'm really excited about in the part of Gottman's research. One of the things that he discovered is that marital satisfaction, relationship satisfaction, declines by about 60 to 70% in the first year after children are introduced into a mix.
Wow.
So part of his work involved creating a program based on the research called Bringing Baby Home. It helps couples make the transition to parenthood. And in the test studies that were done, there was a marked difference in couples who used the Bringing Baby Home material in terms of not losing satisfaction. Also, there was a 66% lower incidence of postpartum depression.
Really?
Among couples who did this. And the focus is keeping the couple strong.
Absolutely.
In the face of this major change in roles.
And paying attention to one another when we're so burned out and tired and nobody gets any sleep.
And bringing coupleness into life right after this little darling comes in. Making time to be together alone. Making time to go out alone.
That's right. Well, that's what I always say to young couples, that you have to get out, and that's why I travel all over the country babysitting.
Yeah. And John
for
Gottman
the kids.
says, John Gottman says that couples' relationship is the cradle that nurtures the baby.
I think that makes absolute sense. When I think it's a good visualization.
Yeah.
You're great. Now, what's the name? We only have a minute or so.
Okay.
What's the name of Gottman's first and most famous book?
I'm not sure this is the first, but it's the most, I'd say, widely distributed. 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work.
Right.
Or 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. He has another book called The Relationship Cure, which applies to everyday relationships, friendships, work relationships, all kinds of relationships.
That's great.
And then a new book just came out last year called And Baby Makes 3, which focuses on
Okay, so that's where people could find that
transition to
material. He has a website, too. Do you know what's the website?
Gottman.com.
Gottman, and GOTTMAN.com.
Yes.
Oh,
And
that's
of course,
great.
I'm in the phone book also,
That's
and I am a
right.
great source of Gottman information.
Okay, that's great. Well, Phyllis, you know I love you. Phyllis is a great friend, a dear woman, and very good at relationships. So thank you for being my friend, and thank you for being here. And I would like you to come back and talk about relationships some more. Would you do that?
I would be thrilled, and I am so grateful for having you in my life, and I'm so glad we met in the way we did and bonded at Target.
Yes, that's right. Spent the next 3 hours together talking about everything we had ever known in our lives. It's great fun. Well, thank you, folks, for being here today. Thank you for coming to Wisdom and Beyond. Thanks to Phyllis. And we've had a great time. And go out there and have some great fun relationships. See you next time. Bye-bye.